Yeah, that's Stone Boy with you get more money, you get more problem. But this is instructive because look, if young people get more money, it's good for the country. But that's not really what the picture looks like, at least with what we're seeing right now. I have a concept paper that puts the whole picture about the state of young people in this country in a better perspective. And they say that young men and women represent significant portion of Ghana's population, with about 60% of the population under the age of 25 and 35% between the age of 15 and 35. Now, they constitute a unique group within society, while they are often considered one of the most vulnerable groups within the society in terms of fabric. You also say that they are also able and regarded as the greatest source of hope for the nation's future. So you hear leaders, politicians talking about young people being the future leaders. Now, mobilizing the creativity and passion of the youth and recognizing the unique perspective of youth or the young people on their current and future needs have become national and international priorities over the period. And so if you look at us here as a country and why we're having this youth policy dialogue, the youth policy dialogue is an activity under the Improving Youth Participation in Public Policy Decision Making project. It's an initiative of the Youth Empowerment Synergy, YAS, supported by the Commonwealth Foundation. I'm going to be telling you a lot more about that when we have people from YES and the Commonwealth Foundation joining us to have a discussion. But if you're just listening to us, if you just tuned in, the conversation began about 5:55 a.m. this morning, and the journey has been on up until now, coming to you live from the British Council Auditorium, where the Youth Empowerment Synergy and the Commonwealth Foundation have put together the Youth Policy Dialogue. It's a dialogue amongst young people concerning the improvement, the development, and the involvement of young people in or contributing to the development of this country in various aspects of our development. So you can join us with your thoughts. If you're unable to join us in person here at the British Council Auditorium, you can also join us on radio. We're live on 3FM 92.7 from now up until 12 noon when the event is expected to be over. But I've been joined in studio, or here, I must say, the outside studio by Mr. Prosper Hoetu, who is the Executive Director of the Youth Network for Human Rights and Democracy, and our very own Shamima Muslim Al-Hassan, moderator for the dialogue, the youth dialogue, which is going to be taking place here at the British Council Auditorium. She's a youth and gender advocate and the convener for the Alliance for Women in Media. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your wonderful listeners listening to us this morning.
You know, Shamima, you have a thing on our listeners. So anytime they hear your voice on radio, there's something.
They have a thing on me too.
But it's good to have you guys joining us
it's good
this
to
morning.
be here.
And I say that this conversation about young people has come at a very, very opportune time, especially when the president yesterday he started the whole conversation with the nation and also with the press, the issue of youth unemployment, giving some very worrying and staggering statistics of youth unemployment in this country. So you have about 84,000 young people applying to the Ghana Immigration Service when they were looking for just 500 people. So the same applies to Ghana Armed Forces, 26,032 young people, out of which 21,000 were qualified, but only 1,800 out of 21,000 qualified applicants were taken. And the Ghana Police Service as well, you have 158,734 young people. And out of that, 71,999 were qualified, at least per the requirement that the police service was looking for. And out of the 71,000, only 2,000 out of 71,000 have been given financial clearance to be employed into the police service. We hear them talking about the fact that it's a national security threat. But beyond the rhetoric and the verbal commitment, have we really been serious about the young people in this country? I'll start with you, Shema.
Obviously not. Once again, let me say good morning. And for us this year, I think that the face of the youth unemployment situation was really sharpened this year with all the statistics you have mentioned, with these
and this
government
is just for the security agencies.
Just for the security agencies. and these are young people. I'm sure about 15. I mean, Ghana defines the youth as anywhere between 15 to 35. But obviously, these are out of school youth.
Sure.
So they probably have some basic qualification and from either tertiary or secondary, and willing and able to avail themselves for these opportunities. The numbers are indeed staggering. It is worrying. It is a national security threat. And if any government continues to pay lip service to issues of youth unemployment, that particular government would have itself to blame. Unfortunately, it's not a Ghanaian problem alone. It's a global problem. As we speak, as part of the World Bank's analysis of the year 2017 in terms of the key issues of global concern, one of the things that came up as highlights was the fact that the world population is young and jobless. And jobless. Yes.
Serious?
The world population, as we speak, is young and jobless. And the greater numbers of the jobless youth are coming from East Asia and Africa. Together, they constitute about 525 million young people unemployed.
525
million young people unemployed. They are jobless. And the fact is that these are even numbers that are low-hanging fruits that could be, readily assessed. As we know, and as we heard from our president yesterday, even in Ghana, we do not have any comprehensive statistics of youth, the numbers of youth who are available, able, and willing to be employed, who are actually employed, what the youth are doing, where they are working, what they are earning. We don't have such comprehensive data. So these are conservative figures. But if there's anything for us to be worrying about, it is the fact that 500 employment outlets would attract 80,000 young people.
84,000.
85. You can't even imagine the numbers. 84,000. It's completely unbelievable. So, like I said, if you're paying lip service to issues of youth unemployment, you would have your own to blame. And it's really weird that we are having this conversation about a youth policy.
Absolutely.
Because you see, in the early 2000s, I was part of a group of young people who actually started advocacy then to draft a youth policy and get government to accept it. We did so much work. I tell you, we did so much work.
So what is that national youth policy?
It has gone through various incubation and rebirth and review and rebirth and review.
How many times can a policy be reborn?
Yes.
Maybe.
So that obviously tells us what we do with youth issues. At a point in time, I think when the NDC administration came in, the argument was that there was no action plan, so they were working to get, an action plan which should operationalize the policy, because a policy is just an aspirational blueprint of what young people want, the opportunities they want created, their challenges, and how they want them addressed. So unless you have a certain backing action plan. And we also found out that even if you had an action plan without any legal framework to enforce some of these provisions, because you can't go and sue a government that, you have violated my right to job or employment or education. You see, the economic and social rights are often non-justiciable, unlike civil and political rights. So you leave it up to governments to make determination as to what to do, when to do it, how they do it. Unless you really put some serious pressure and politicians begin to see the real cost to even their own survival, to their political fortunes.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm sad that young people are allowing themselves to be increasingly politicized, in extreme
they become
partisan,
relevant during election years, because they can do the legwork,
and
they
right
can
now,
do the noise.
They are fighting themselves instead of seeing that they have a common a common goal and should work among themselves. It's the young people that are actually deepening the partisanship in our nation, and these are worrying issues that we'll be talking about.
The young people and what government has done within the 1 year period. I remember speaking to the Minister of Employment and Labor Relations. He said that government is now doing a job impact assessment survey to find out the number of jobs that were created as a result of a particular government intervention or otherwise. So I would wait for that report, in fact, impatiently, to get to know exactly what has been done. But Prosper, when you hear politicians, and indeed, well, the people we call notable Ghanaians who are supposed to know better, make the statement that the youth are the future generation, or we are the future leaders, have we really concentrated enough in terms of formulating the policies, in terms of putting together measures that will prepare the youth to be leaders of that future that we talk of as a country? When we say the youth are future leaders, have we done enough to prepare the youth to be leaders of the future?
Sadly, I don't think so. And I have worked with politicians, policymakers across the divide, and I do not think that we are doing enough. You see, we are saying that young people constitute about 60% of the population, and it is a very critical human resource that you need to drive the development of this country. And one of the UN reports in 2006 wondered why such a good human resource has become rather a security threat on the continent. So what is missing is interventions that we can use to harness their potentials to drive the development of these countries. Now, many stakeholders are doing several things, but somehow the center is not there. There is no proper coordination. You will notice that we have a long history of a national youth policy which started as far back as 1993.
1993.
As Shamima alluded to. So these things happen because, first of all, when we started the process in 1993, the United Nations adopted a resolution in 1995, which is the
So that's about what, some 24 years ago?
Yes, for action, yes. Which is the rebate, it's normally called the rebate, which provided a broad framework for countries to adopt formulating new policies so that they can respond appropriately to youth development. And then subsequently, we belong to the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth Ministers of Youth also adopted a resolution that by 1998, they would have put together, member countries would have committed themselves to putting in place policy frameworks.
Right.
Then, when we started our process in 1993, the then NDC government came out with the youth policy in 1999.
I see.
Somehow, due to the change of government in 2000, the policy came to a standstill. There was no implementation. And the new government said that they needed to review that policy and then added an action plan before they could implement. That was the process that my sister Shamima was involved in. From early 2000, up to 2008, when the MPP government left power, there was controversy as to whether or not that policy was approved by cabinet. So the group of young people led by myself, we had to even go picketing in parliament to ensure that the new NDC government ensured that the policy was launched and then implemented. So upon persistent advocacy and pressure, government launched the policy on August 12, 2010, but without the implementation plan. So we began another cycle of advocacy until an implementation plan was put in place by 2014 and launched early 2015. And this plan was supposed to be implemented within a period of 4 years, 2014 to 2017. So we are in 2018 now. I have not seen any action on the implementation. I have not seen any progress report on the implementation of the youth policy. So if we are saying that young people are the leaders, future leaders, or in fact leaders today, how are we preparing them for leadership? How? Yes, what's the future? So it's today, it's about today. So how do you harness the potential of these young people? That's why you need a policy framework where various stakeholders can play their role in achieving these results. Interestingly, our own analysis of the situation, if you look at the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda, the youth sector analysis shows that there are several policies, but the problem is poor policy coordination. The situation we have in this country is that there are several ministries, departments, and agencies focusing on youth. So that is how they budget. If you take Ministry of Health, if you take Ministry of Youth, if you take Ministry of Agri, all of them target youth one way or the other. But there is no opportunity for them to work together within one framework to achieve collective results, share ideas together, and all that. And so that is the situation we have in this country. Another issue is participation. Even if you are crafting policies for young people, as a matter of right, you should consult them because they are the beneficiaries and they have very good ideas about how to do that. Somehow, almost every time, we have to literally force ourselves into the process. I'll give you a classic example of what happened on the National Youth Policy, National Youth Authority Act, which was passed in December 2016. Government announced the review of the former law in 2010, in the 2010 budget. So from 2010, we've been following the process. There have been very limited consultations with young people on the bill. Yes. So what we did as an organization is that we had to form more like a coalition of youth groups. And then we took the bill and then worked to produce a report which contained our observations and recommendations. It was at that point that we submitted to Cabinet, submitted to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and submitted to Parliament. So when Parliament advertised for a memorandum, it was at that point that they invited the youth to participate. So what happened during the drafting of the bill itself? So the ministry sponsoring a bill.
Did you consider the input of the young people?
No. No. So we had to literally force ourselves into the process before Parliament invited us to discuss our recommendations. And then luckily for us, some of the recommendations found their way into the law. But there are several benefits of engaging young people in decision making. Apart from the fact that you offer them the opportunity to develop critical leadership skills, decision making skills, organizational skills, and all that, they also, you make the policy more responsive to their needs because you get to understand them better, and then you shape the policy such that it will respond directly to their needs. So once we take them out, there have been several policies, and because we take young people out, you notice that the policies are not working well. One of them is the National Youth Employment Program, which was developed some years back. There was very limited consultation with young people. The policy came, it started, and we are not seeing any much results. But just one more comment on the unemployment situation. It's very sad that as a country, we do not have any reliable statistics on the situation. It's very sad. What you are giving us, it gives us picturesque view of the situation, but this is not very scientific. We want to understand, first of all, how many young people have labor market skills. How many of them are educated? How many of them have skills? How many of them haven't been to school at all? How many of them don't have any skills at all? And those who have skills, in which areas do they have the skills? You get it. So once you are able to conduct this audit as a country, then we'll begin to project. Then we get to understand which sectors have the capacity to absorb more young people. Then we invest in those sectors to get them there. If we talk about youth enterprise development, you see that a lot of young people are struggling to get their businesses to work. But what governments do is to ensure that the right environment exists to support them. We've seen initiatives like YES and all that, but to what extent are they supporting these people? You see,
a great point. You see, and it's actually very instructive because these are youth-centered policies, but the formulation process does not involve young people. So you sit in an office, think about a policy about young people without our involvement. Shamima, where is the missing link, and how can we bridge it? Because this youth development process is a continuum, right? And it's not an event. Where is the disconnect? How do we deal with this to give a lot more meaning to that statement that young people are the leaders of the now and the resource of this country?
The disconnect has to do with commitment to action, because to be fair, right now, with the various policies that we have regarding youth, my brother Prosper would agree that there's been some form of youth stakeholder involvement in the current policy that we now do have, which we are being told by the current administration they would also review again. It does have some youth, participation. So it's no longer the diagnosis of the problem. We know what the problem is. We want jobs. Youth want jobs. Youth want to be economically integrated into the economy. They want to be able to live a basic quality life. They want access to basic social services, health, education, shelter. These are the basic things that all young people aspire to. Everybody growing up, you don't want to become a liability on yourself and to the society. And if the environment doesn't foster the proper, system for you to be able to thrive, you'll fall along the way and you become a threat, a security threat to the society. So the disconnect has to do with commitment to action. And of course, you need governments will tell you that they have so many problems they're dealing with. But you see, you have to be able to put your money where your mouth is, as the saying goes. If you really understand the threats of youth unemployment and low skills, no government will sit back and be unconcerned. Like my brother was saying, if you disaggregate the data, you know where the intervention will go. You know which sector, for example, if we had this data disaggregated, we would have known whether or not it was good sense to turn our polytechnic institutions into degree institutions. You see, if we had data on the numbers of youth in the informal sector with just basic, perhaps primary or junior high school, who can do things with their hands. If we know the numbers in that area, we would know whether it makes sense to turn all polytechnic institutions that are mandated to train people, artisans, the use of their hands, to degree awarding institutions, because everybody wants a degree now. It would make sense to do that. If we know that our majority of our youth are actually educated, they have attained tertiary institution level, we would know whether or not we want to push money into incubator programs, because right now a lot of young people want to go into entrepreneurship, because obviously government and the private sector are not providing the number of jobs.
The 2018 budget, not to interrupt you, there was a tax cut that government promised young entrepreneurs. That has not been effected as yet. So you have a lot of young people who have this dream of starting businesses, hoping that this would have been a good encouragement for them, because one of the major problems of young people starting a business is the cost of capital.
It's capital.
Really?
But it's also skill.
True.
It's one thing to have the idea and the dream, but it's another thing to actually have the skill and the capacity to be able to manage the money when you get it, and that your idea is actually well thought through.
True.
You are able to do your financial projections real well. So there's also a skills gap. So for those willing and who have the passion to do private businesses, they need that kind of support, and the state has to respond to that. Globally, we are told that 2/3 of global wealth is human capital. is human capital. So it's the skills, we are talking about people's efforts. That is what is really generating wealth for most nations. And for most high-income nations, human capital constitutes 65% of global wealth.
True.
You know how much it does for our side of the world? Merely 41%.
Imagine
you
that.
know, and it's really a big problem. And the fact is that we all know that it's education that will pull people out of this poverty rat. So if you're not educating your youth, you have a challenge. So the youth are also calling for education, because as we speak right now, they say there's crisis in learning in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Quality and quantity is reducing.
And Ghana is no
One
exception.
in five child in sub-Saharan Africa does not know how to read and write. One in
We were
five
captured in that
child,
report. I
yes,
think it's a World Bank
does
report.
not. Yes,
so.
the World Bank cannot read or write. So these are the people that are coming up. And you know, when I was preparing for this program, I found out that in the 80s, there's a report that tells us that in the 80s, if you were born in the 80s, like myself, 12%, only 12% of us born in the 80s in sub-Saharan Africa have had an education higher than our parents had.
12%.
12%. Do you know what the numbers are for East Asia and other parts of the world? Over 80%.
My goodness.
Over 80%.
Oh, Lord.
When will we catch up?
Lord help us.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. And on that note, I'm just hoping that those who have to listen are listening and taking notes about how serious the situation is, so that the verbal commitments will translate a lot more into the urgent action that needs to be taken to address the problems of young people in this country. We're still live here from the British Council Auditorium, where the Youth Empowerment Synergy, in collaboration with the Commonwealth Foundation, is bringing you the Youth Policy Dialogue. It's going to be starting all other things being equal in the next 15 minutes. And the dialogue will begin. Shamima is here with us. Shamima Muslim Al-Hassan is a moderator for this particular dialogue. A youth and gender advocate, and also the convener for the Alliance for Women in Media. She was also here with Mr. Prosper Huetu, who is executive director of the Youth Network for Human Rights and Democracy, having a discussion with me. I'm going to go for this quick breather of music. A number of you are also sending us your messages. The WhatsApp number is 0500 60 70 70. 0500 60 70 70, and I read out to you. That's the WhatsApp number we're using. And on Twitter, you can tweet at me directly at Alfred_3FM. Alfred_3FM, read out to you. After that, we'll be having Professor William Boateng, who's a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana, Legon, also sharing his thoughts with us ahead of this dialogue. Do stay tuned in and keep your thoughts coming through. So,
give the brief background about that. Yes.
we're still live here on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. A number of you already sending us your messages. WhatsApp number is 0500 60 70 70. 0500 60 70 70. I read it out to you. We're coming to you live from the British Council Auditorium, where we're going to be bringing you a live coverage of the Youth Policy Dialogue put together by the Youth Empowerment Synergy and the Commonwealth Foundation, and centered towards on the development of young people and the involvement of young people in nation building. And especially comes at a time when the president, at least with what he said yesterday, appreciates the extent of the youth unemployment situation in the country and how much of a security threat it is to our nation. But beyond the rhetoric, there are many who have questioned whether we've done enough in terms of commitment to develop young people whom we say are the future leaders. If we do believe that young people are the future leaders, has enough been done to develop the leaders that we want to have for the future of this country? I've been joined here by three persons some who have already been sharing their thoughts about what happened yesterday. Professor William Boateng is a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana, Legon. Professor Ransford Jampo is a director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon, and also an associate professor at the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana, Legon. Emmanuel Eduji is the executive director of the that's Youth Empowerment Synergy Ghana. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's great to have you. Now, Professor Boateng, the conversation with my earlier guests ended on the point that if as a country we are unable to quantify the extent of unemployment amongst young people, then what's the basis in developing policies that are expected to impact on youth employment, as it were, create employment for young people? Because yesterday there's a question about whether we do know the extent of youth unemployment and how many jobs have been created as a result of one government intervention or the other. But we do not know. How dangerous is this situation? And how much have we committed to developing young people in terms of creating employment for them in this country?
Well, thank you very much. I think I will put it in a better perspective. As a country, are we interested in making sure that our policies are based on hard facts? That is how I will put the question. Even beyond the number of people who are unemployed, I will ask a question. As a country, do we even know the number of firms that collapse annually, the number of firms that register annually? Have we even taken time to look at the number of firms that we have in the country currently? So if you move into that, then you ask yourself, if you ask a minister currently, how many people are on government payroll now? Will the minister be able to tell you offhand? So it shows how important we see data. And that has been our challenge. We don't look at data and statistics as key to formulating policies, implementing policies, monitoring progress, and so on. And that has been the thing that we have. Those of us in academia, we look at data from various sources to try and tell a story. Currently, I can tell you a figure, an estimate of the number of young people who enter the labor market every year from, let's say, secondary school and tertiary institutions, based on raw data that I have done. So it is up to the government to look at, this is what I want to do, and therefore I should get people who will collate all these data, organize them, and inform me about the current situation and be able to tell people this is what I have, and therefore these are the policies that I'm going to come up with to be able to solve the problem. This is not the first time this has come up. I remember in 2009, 2010, the then Minister of Employment was in Parliament to answer a question about the number of people who are unemployed. And he was categorical to say that there is no data on unemployment. If you ask me the unemployment rate currently, I can only refer you to 2015. That's the most recent data on unemployment. That's the labor force survey that was conducted by
in 2015.
2015 by Discourse Service, and they quote unemployment rate at 11.9%, which even needs to be looked at again and come up with whether indeed it is unemployment rate or the number of young people or the number of people who are jobless. So the point is that commitment, having a vision. This is where I want to go. I want to know the number of people who have the problem and be able to tackle it. And if we start from the basics, trying to get our statistics right, then we will be able to get somewhere.
Now, you were saying that you have some raw data, at least what you can refer to about the states of unemployment amongst young people in this country, at least with the number of people who graduate from the various institutions that eventually join the labor market. Can you share that with us? That is, if you can remember to the top of your head, before I come to Professor Jampo, about whether we have really been serious beyond the rhetoric in putting together effective policies. And so, because some of the policies have been introduced, but how effective those policies are in addressing the problem at hand is where the issue is. And Prof, if you do...
Okay, it is not my data. It is government's own data, and I have taken it to be able to tell a story. So if you say my own data, I don't generate data, but I know government has. So what I have done is to look at the number of students who leave secondary school every year. Look at the number of students who are admitted into all tertiary institutions every year. That is the subsequent years. Strike the difference and get an estimate of those people who enter the labor market. Because if you leave secondary school and you are not able to move up to the tertiary level, for instance, secondary school, vocational, and so on, you expect that they will move into polytechnic, they will move into training colleges and the universities. So if you then look at admission or enrollment at that level, then you should be able to strike the difference. And every year, universities turn out students. So
yes.
you look at a National Transportation Education has the data. They have the data, the number of students.
So there are available
graduated
institutions that
so
if
on.
government is really
So
serious and wants to know
Yes.
the statistics, they will know.
Yes.
It's not as if it's something
so you go
that
there, you have it. So you then have to get the method, proper method to be able to get that. And if I could share that with you, okay. So I have here, in 2008, I estimated the number of people who entered the labor market in 2008 to be 129,600. That is from secondary and tertiary. And this has been increasing. And in 2016, the estimate is 278,900. And if I divide them into tertiary and then secondary, tertiary I have about 69,000, secondary I have about 209,000. And this is government of Ghana's own data. So you have the data, you need to get the right method, and if government is committed to getting all these, the institutions could go there and get data to inform government. This is labor market entrance. These are not unemployed, because when these people enter the labor market, some of them will get something to do, some of them will not get, some of them will fall out of the labor market, some of them will go and do further studies and so on and so forth. But to be able to do a proper kind of analysis, you need to go beyond this.
You need to go beyond this. But, Professor Jampo, it's not as though this is a hopeless situation, because you see, it's not the situation that we don't have data. At least there's a basis, something we can refer to. And Professor Boateng keeps mentioning commitment on the part of government. Why are we not doing the needful of going where the data is to develop effective policies to address the problem at hand?
Well, like he said, it's about commitment and showing the will, determination and zeal to tackle problems from the roots. In my view, governments of the Fourth Republic have tackled problem, from the superficial angle, and so you just do something that covers the problem, and 1 year, 2 years, the problem surfaces again. And so a lot of people, including policymakers, keep saying that you don't have the statistics, you don't have the data to back unemployment, for instance. But he's telling us, giving us some information coming from the tables of government.
Absolutely.
And all that. And so the point is, it seems to me that policymakers would have
if you just speak up a bit for me, I'll be glad.
Policymakers would have to go to the right sources and then also surround themselves with the right caliber of people who have access to some of these information. The challenge I've seen in our country is that when people who are independent and have what it takes to serve their country, emerge, because you are not aligned to the political party in government or something, they tell you, well, we can make use of you. Sure. And when you talk about labor economics, he's my colleague, and I know his pedigree and what he can do for the country. But nobody would use him. We'll wait till he's about to die. And that is when we would want to appoint him as a Minister of Finance or Deputy Minister of Employment. And that's the challenge of many African countries. And so the information is there, the right caliber of people are there. They may not be aligned, but if you are interested and committed to advancing the cause of the interests of the very people we seeking to govern, then we should go to them for that these kinds of information. It is very key. And look, unemployment is a national security matter, and it's not just about mounting the political platform and then just promising employment. It's about putting in place concrete mechanisms that will help find some job for teaming youth. Otherwise, we are sitting on a time.
Do we really even understand this problem? Prof.
Well, I think politicians say a lot of things, and when they get into power, they see that, look, it's not as easy as what you saw when you were in. So I think the way, the pussyfooting approach that they adopt to dealing with some of these policy challenges betray a certain lack of firm grasp and understanding of the problem. But it's important that we do well as a nation. I don't think it's a hopeless situation. Like I've always said, I have a firm belief in this particular administration led by the president. And I want to believe that if he would listen to some of these and also push his own people he's appointed to work hard, they will be able to do their best to kind of surmount the challenge a little. All is not lost, but they should look for people who would not sing their praises. Look for people who are independent-minded people, who have grasp of the issues, and then give them the opportunity to serve the nation. Okay, it isn't every time that we must fill in positions from amongst us. And that's how come I commended the president for looking across the political divide, in, for instance, appointing a special prosecutor and all that. But fill in more positions with people who have a grasp over the issues, so that they can really interrogate the issues and make understanding clear, proper, concrete policy interventions that may help. And we shouldn't be in a hurry as a nation to fix problems. Otherwise, then we tackle them at a facial and superficial level. But I've always said that regimes must learn to tackle maximum 3-4 problems. Tackle them to the root, rather than promising everything and knowing that your solutions may just be at a facial and superficial level. It's not. It doesn't help.
A great point there. Now, Mr. Duchi, I know we're going to be starting the dialogue very soon,
right?
And you put together this, and it comes at the time when the president has made this particular statement. What, in your view, are you expecting that this dialogue will complement in terms of finding solutions to the problem that the president articulated?
Well, maybe 2 or 3 things. Number one, there seemed to be some momentum on youth issues, in particular youth unemployment.
True.
Everyone, this morning, you've said more than 10 times
Absolutely.
that the current youth unemployment situation, it's a time bomb, it's going to flare up, it's a national security problem, and so on and so forth. So we're hoping this dialogue will just increase that momentum, but not in the fashion in which we've done it in the past, where we've all come, we've spoken, and then we leave and forget. But for the first time, young people themselves have put together in a proactive way what we call the People's National Youth Policy. It's
People's National Youth Policy.
So this whole issue is about, if government is not doing it, if the government is not being proactive, if government is not pushing it, the previous panelists you have gave you a very good, what I believe is a fantastic
since
history.
1993. We've been developing a youth policy that has never materialized till now.
So
how?
It's a 10-year cycle, I'll tell you. So from the 1993, we got a policy outdoored in 99. I was actually just looking at that early this morning in the office. And then when government changed, that draft policy became the basis for power play between the next 2 governments. So when a new one comes, they said, okay, I'm going to have to spend some time to review it, revise it, change it, do something. And then the 4 years leaves. So we had another 10 years from the 1999 draft until we got another draft in 2010. And so in August 2010, the then Professor Mills administration launched what will be Ghana's first national youth policy. The question, as your earlier panelists rightly put it, is what is the extent of implementation of that 2010 policy? And do we have any progress report, review, or any kind of information as to who has implemented a component of it, whether budgets were released over the last 7 years for it, and so on. So today's meeting, it's important because even before young people put pressure on government to say, let's work together to have a new policy that we can work on, the young people themselves have come to the table with a policy, a draft, something they believe in as a way to help government to make the process even more smoother.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
So you've changed the narrative
We've changed the narrative.
concerning this whole conversation
Right.
about the policy.
Right.
So now, look, if government is pussyfooting, as Professor Jampo put it, the young people have taken their destiny into their own hands.
That's right.
Put together the policy of the People's National Youth Policy.
That's right.
And you're going to present it to government,
That's
I guess.
right.
And let's see how it goes from there. I'm told that the dialogue is just about starting. And so, Emmanuel Duji is the Executive Director of the Youth Empowerment Synergy. You just heard him. Professor Ransford Jampo is with us. He's the Director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon, and also Associate Professor at the Political Science Department at the same institution. Also joining us, Professor William Bamboateng. He's also going to be delivering a statement at the dialogue, which is just about starting. He's a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana, Legon. Also with us here. Stay with us here on 3FM 92.7. For those of you who are unable to make it to the British Council Auditorium, if you're nearby, you can just walk in and get to listen. But if not, you can listen to the conversation or the dialogue we're going to be having from now up until 12 noon. Here from the British Council Auditorium, put together by Youth Empowerment Synergy in collaboration with the Commonwealth Foundation. And this is the Youth Policy Dialogue here on 3FM 92.7. My name is Alfred Okanse. Shamima Muslim is going to take over in the auditorium. She's going to be moderating this dialogue. Stay with us here on 3FM. Good morning.